My friend said that if we go back to 6v6, we would be back in double shield or something even worse. Thoughts? No. Double shield doesn't exist in the way that it would have. And with this balanced team, again, like, you can go back and look at 2020 when they tried to fix double shield. You can see my reaction. The video is there. I had the footage for my, like, why tanking sucks video that I decided not to make because the season 9 changes came out, right? Like, you see me say, this will not work. You are doing this wrong again. And I was nice and polite, and I told them exactly why it would not work. And lo and behold, I was right again. Now, this is a different balance team, but the reality is you just have to understand what you're doing, right? Are we really going to act like Mauga was not worse than double shield when he was meta? He was equally as bad. Today's video is brought to you guys by War Thunder, which is the most comprehensive vehicle shooter game of all time, guys. There are 2,500 different vehicles that you can select to play as from many different eras. Join 70 million other players around the world in playing this game. Guys, War Thunder is a sick game. You've probably seen them all over YouTube. You've seen them on the channel before. It's because they really do a good job of actually putting their product out there, guys. They do a ton of different stuff. The game is free, and you can play it on Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. You can go on any different platform and enjoy the game. So it's pretty sick what they've done over there with this game, and I've got some goodies for you guys that I'm going to list to you here in a second. So if you use my code that is down in the description, you're going to get a couple things here, guys. You're going to get the exclusive vehicle decor Eagle of Valor, which is pretty sick. You're going to get 100,000 Silver Lions and 7 days of a premium count directly from my link down in the description. Guys, this game is freaking sweet. It's got a ton of awesome features. You guys should absolutely go check it out. It's a win for the channel, win for you, and win for the company, and we want to see good games flourish. So big shout out to War Thunder today. Be sure to use that code down below, and thank you guys so much. Let's get right into the action, and thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. The main reason Double Shield, like, the main reason Double Shield was so broken is that it broke like, not the rock, paper, scissors, but the cycle of comps, right? Because if they just picked Bat Brig, you could not dive past it, and they were overkitted heroes anyway. Orisa doesn't even have her shield anymore. Like, Ram single-handedly would replace either Orisa or Sigma in Double Shield. You wouldn't be able to play it. Ram would go hard. Queen could do a lot versus that comp. With her shout, you could double stack speed and get extra health midway through the fight. So, like, like, here's my thing. Like, listen, it's totally fine for you to prefer what you want to prefer. The most solid argument for 5v5, genuinely, and I agree with this, guys. It is Q times. Like, the most solid argument 5v5 has is Q times. It just is, right? Like that is a very legitimate concern that you need to pay attention to. It's important. It is very, very important. Don't you think that Mauga has even broken is less oppressive than Double Shield? No, because it's easier to be oppressive as Mauga than it was Double Shield. Mauga across every rank had a 55+% win rate, right? Double Shield was only getting picked at the high level play. The difference between tanking in Overwatch 2 and oppressive tanks in Overwatch 1 compared to Overwatch 2 is that you had to actually execute to some degree in Overwatch 1. But in Overwatch 2, when the oppressive tank is oppressive, it's oppressive throughout every rank. It affects more players. And the statistics prove this. The stats prove it. How people complain about counter swapping now throughout the game prove it, right? The experience is objectively less fun on tank because the experience is more out of your control, ironically, even without all the CC. And I'm sick of seeing anybody who says this is it's a dumb argument. Let me make this clear. Dumb. This is just dumb. It's ignorant. It's ignorant and wrong, right? Anybody who says, well, you didn't have the right tank synergy in Overwatch 1, you lost the game. First of all, in order to get value on a tank synergy, you had to be good players. So there's a skill factor to it for 99% of the synergies, right? Number two, you can still get the wrong tank matchup now. And it's worse now because now you don't have a chance to cover up the weakness. At least before, you had to actually execute to some degree, and you had a chance to get another tank that could cover the weakness. Now, if you get a hog one trick on Havana, it's even worse than it was in Overwatch 1. Because in Overwatch 1, he could flank. Like, he had a couple options, right? It's still inoptimal, right? Neither one is perfect. But in 5v5, that happens more and it's worse, which is why you see people constantly complaining about having to counter swap. So what are you saying? Like, you're arguing for 6v6 with that argument. It's absurd. So my advice to the 5v5ers would be, look, you should stick to Q times. Like, it is a good argument. It really is. But the rest of the shit people are saying is just ignorant. And honestly, I would say, I wonder if the reason why the Q times are the same is because You cut the tank pool in half anyway, or not in half, but a lot less people play tank now because the role's not fun. And if they had introduced heroes like Junker Queen, Tank Doomfist, Ramatra, and even Wauga into Overwatch 1 instead of Sigma, who was insanely overkitted, and Ball, who were niche heroes anyway, and Orisa, people would love playing tank because all of those characters translate well to DPS and other heroes. They're just different forms of playing the game. But they didn't do that to a single tank they added for 3 years and then abandoned the game and left it in the state of double shield with all the CC and power creep healing that they put in the game that they never addressed. If they had done any of the things they did in this game with even the DPS passive, which I'm not a big fan of, if they had tried literally anything, all of this would have stopped. The old dev team never would have done that. The new dev team will, which I got it. Like guys, undoubtedly, like, I'm not a huge fan of like how some balance changes come out, but this balance team is undoubtedly better than Jeff Goodman's. Undoubtedly, not even close. Not even close. It's night and day. They are so much better than the Kaplan and Goodman era. Aside from October 2020, when they actually were patching the game and did a good job. And the game's free now, too. It's like, you want people to queue the role, make it fun. Like, it's such a backwards, like, thought mentality. And honestly, by the way, I think you can do both. Like, there's no reason why they can't do a 5v5 season or a 6v6 season. Like, there's no reason. All right, guys, it's time. I have been getting spammed to react to this video because Flats was apparently asked to not ask about 6v6, which makes sense. I think Blizzard is kind of like in watch and wait mode on that one. It keeps coming back up. Like, I'll be honest, like, my intent when I made my video and kind of pushed about 6v6 was not to like start a civil war. I'm actually totally cool with people having their opinions. Like, if you prefer one or the other, like, that's fine. I don't see why Blizzard can't do both at some points. But there was a little bit of a Twitter war this weekend about that one. One note I will say is I think it's pretty apparent. One side points out objective gameplay issues. The other side likes to tell other people how to think. And, you know, we'll see about that. But either way, here we go. Let's break this down and let's watch all this bad boy. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it look nice, but my whole stream is just scuffed 90% of the time. So like, this is, you know, a little bit out there. But
I swear I wasn't like tidying up my room 30 seconds ago.
You know, I probably should have done the same now that I think about it. But oh well. How are you doing?
Aaron's a great dude, man.
First off, before we get into anything big.
Oh, I'm doing good. Yeah.
Aaron's a great dude, man. I like Aaron. He's a great guy.
I hear that.
I like great things happening this week. So.
I loved the dev video from last week. You know,
yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Aaron too. And it's like, this is why, like, when like I was freaking pissed about the PvE. I didn't want to blame Aaron or Jared because, like, look, man, like, a lot of people nowadays can disagree with people and they just like assign that to the entire person's identity. And I think that's a super shallow way to think about life and people in general. And Aaron, like, he's just a good dude. Like, everything I've seen about the guy has been great. Everything I've heard about the guy is great. So it's really nice to see him get received well. And, you know, like, he's wearing his heart on his sleeve. And listen, anybody who puts themselves out there and wears their heart on their sleeve and goes out there and tries to do good, like, I will respect that person no matter what, even if I disagree sometimes. Like, and I think it'd be nice to see more people kind of adapt that worldview too.
I mean, it's like in the best way possible. Like, it really feels like you've really become very comfortable with like speaking on camera and talking to the community about stuff.
Also, do you guys want 1.5 or 1.25? I want to go 1.5 because it's really long. Flats needs to grow some balls and ask about 6v6. No, he doesn't. Guys, okay. Let me say this too, okay? When you get invited into someone else's home, you do not disrespect them. You do not do that. It is unprofessional, it is classless, and it says more about you than it says about them. Blizzard was nice enough, because they don't have to do this, right, to let Flats interview the game director. That never happens, right? And so if that's gonna happen, then it's gonna be on their terms, because it's their interview, right? They're the ones letting Flats interview them. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So if Flats were to go around that and be disrespectful, it would be one of the most unprofessional, rude things that you could do, and it's not a good thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. And if you think that's a good idea to do, then you need to grow up. I'm sorry.
Deserve props for that.
Thank
you've come a long way.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at it when this started, you know? And I swear, like, nobody hurt my feelings online when they talked about it or anything like that. But yeah, you know what's weird is I've been on the Overwatch team since it started in 2013. And for most of that time, I was the assistant game director. And so I thought that when I got the job, you know, and like jumped in as game director, I would be totally ready for it and really confident. But it took a few years, you know, to like to feel comfortable there. And I think like sometimes like my comfort level, like speaking to people like you or on camera, is kind of been mirrored just in my comfort level helping to lead the team in the project.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. It's a completely different world, you know, and especially probably internally. You had no problem always talking to the team about stuff coming up, and then it's very different once it goes to that outside perspective. And I'm the same way. Like, you know, in real life, like I never had problems like talking or communicating or anything like that. But when I first started streaming, like I would stutter a lot more. Like if I read on stream, I fall apart. Like it's like reading like a sixth grade.
Oh yeah, he's so real.
Like,
so real
why are you you know, like why are you having such a hard time reading? Like, dude, because I'm trying to glance over a chat really quick, and I don't want to like
How is
run out of breath mid sentence. Like,
because they specifically told him not to. That's why.
Stuff, so it's very different. But I just
well, I've got my teleprompter set up for all my answers today, so I should.
How is the team feeling right now with the game, the recent updates, the projectile changes? Do you feel like they accomplished their goals, or you know, what's your overall sentiment of it?
So this is awesome. So we're pretty happy with season 9. And it's like for a couple of reasons, you know, like it feels like there was a big reaction from our community too, that they were all really excited to see a lot of these changes. And I think you're right. It's in like 2 different areas. So like one, there was changes to competitive, and then there was changes to the core gameplay. And we can probably,
changes were great.
I think there's going to be a theme here that comes up a few times over this conversation. And I'll just kind of like start it now where over like the course of Overwatch's history, you know, even from like 2016, there weren't a lot of times where we made big changes to the core game, like the actual core gameplay, right? Or to a system that really affects it. And I think that like I kind of put it at 3, and one of them almost doesn't count because it was the original competitive system, and that was released like a month after Overwatch.
yeah.
And then after that we had roll queue, you know, in July of 2019, and then when Overwatch 2 launched and we switched to the
that was August.
Format. You know, I'm just gonna like keep going. Sorry.
Or the pro format though, yeah, he's right.
But so we switched to the 5v5 format, and those were like the moments where the game had like really big changes to it. And other than that, like we would always like release new heroes.
And the big changes
and fun events,
are not a bad idea.
I think the release of content a lot of times has the same sort of effect or the same change on a game that some of the changes are that we did in season 9, changing competitive, changing core gameplay.
Great.
And so like for us, like I think that we're excited to have like done this, and then this is kind of the way we're looking at the game, you know, going forward is like,
what the hell did I do?
What are some of the other things that we could be doing? What are some of the other changes that we could be making, you know? And so it's like, one, it could be more changes to the competitive system, you know, but also it's like, it's the cadence that we do some of this stuff. I talked about it a little bit on the developer update, but when we did this internally, we were talking about this thing, like we internally called it the PvP refresh, right? Like here's a moment where we're gonna like do a lot of work to the game, and we thought we would do it annually. Like, hey, here's this annual cadence. We're gonna make a lot of changes like this to the game. And I think that now that it's launched, we're in the spot where we think that might not be enough. You know, like it's probably not enough to do this on an annual basis. I don't think we ought to do it on a seasonal basis.
That's a little much.
It'd be a little bit crazy. So we're now talking about like, okay, what are the different like really big beats that we could have to the core game over the course
I'm worried 1.25 is a little slow.
Differentiate those from each other, and it could be that like, hey, maybe there's like 2 sets of placements every year, and each one of those there's going to be a set of changes to the game that come along with it that also kind of like
and this is good
that's coming. And
by the way, like that's good. That's what Fortnite does, and this is why I'm saying like, you know, everyone's so back and forth about 5v5 and 6v6. Why can't you do both? Why can't you have one season that's 5v5 and have another one that's 6v6, right? And the more I think about that, I don't see why you can't if you're willing to adjust the game aggressively like they did in season 9, right? That might be smart to keep the game feeling fresh and getting people to come back and forth. And Fortnite did no build, right? They do stuff like this all the time, right? I'm not necessarily against either one. So it could be either one, right? It could be either one.
So we're kind of like, we're working through all of that right now as fast as we can, because we're really hoping that, like, in my head, we're hoping that there's some sort of like mid-year beat that we're doing as well.
Yeah.
That went like pretty sideways from the original question.
Yeah, it's funny. It's that I have like questions that are similar almost along those lines we were talking about. I'm jumping ahead slightly a bit, and just my own personal opinion. I asked chat a couple days ago because I agree with you. I think seasonal is just, you're like out of the question. Like, let's not get crazy. But even a semi-annually, I think learned a lot from like the launch of Overwatch 2, right? Like I would say the launch of Overwatch 2, like there was a lot of hype for about 3-ish months, and then it kind of started to feel like old Overwatch in a lot of ways. And even with the patch that's just come out now, the game feels very fresh. Now, granted, we can talk about numbers, talk about certain characters, you know, whatever. But like, it's been a nice
fresh.
refresh again.
Yeah.
And so like, I know that it's.
And I was wrong about a lot of that. I thought it'd be
2 or 3
horrible.
times a year.
I thought nothing would die.
I'm glad you guys are looking at that, because
the breakpoints, it wasn't balanced. It wasn't balanced at all.
I wasn't even playing ranked anymore. Like it was just kind of. Like there was no point. It felt like I kind of already sit there. Like I'm not pro aspirations. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I know I'm not good enough. And so, you know, there wasn't anything for me to do. But the changes really brought life to it. So I like you guys looking at that.
Cool. I love that. I was gonna make like another point like in the middle of that, but I think I think I might have just like lost it a bit. But I think okay. So here's what it is actually. So like you mentioned, like hey, maybe this could happen multiple times a year. I think when you look at Overwatch also and you compare it to other games, like there's obviously a lot of differences that we can talk about and a lot of things that I think Overwatch does so well. But when we built the game, it was almost like an exercise in like how much can you take out of a game? You know, like it doesn't have a lot of the systems that other games have. There's like no like in-game like shop or something like that. There's no progression over the course of a match. There's not like we did, like when we were developing Overwatch, like we did experiment with a talent system for our heroes and removed that because we thought it kind of got in the way of just like knowing what different heroes could do.
It did. It did.
And so we don't necessarily have a lot of the knobs that some other games do to help keep the game fresh, right? Like you can imagine if we did have a system like that, just changing some of those on a seasonal basis, along with doing balance changes, suddenly has like a much bigger.
It's a different
impact,
game,
you know?
yeah.
And so like I think we look at that and we've kind of realized that like I've talked a little bit about like just releasing content isn't enough, and a lot of times just doing balance changes isn't enough. And it's like I don't think we can make enough big balance changes often enough to where it's going to totally solve that problem for us. So yeah, I think you're right. We have to find other ways of doing it.
Here's what I'll give him. He's saying a lot of the right things right now. He's saying a lot of the right things right now, right? That like I really, really, really like what he's saying here.
Like potentially, there's other systems that do give us knobs. You know, I think we're starting to open up to possibilities like that.
Yeah,
good.
I do want to say really quick because I'm gonna put a lot of that balance stuff towards the back because I have, you know, as you know, I probably have a lot to say about that. But the thing is though, I want to commend you really quickly about what you're talking about because the thing that was going to destroy the game the most, that the 5-second passive. Ended up being fine. Like, you know, things like that, swinging the bat and like actually just going out there and just trying stuff. Because like as a community and like I admit like I fall into it too. You know, if you the clickbait of like oh everyone's gonna.
I don't think the claim was that it would destroy the game. I just think it's unnecessary and it doubles down on role passives, which make balance harder. Again, like global passives are impossible to make like. It's impossible to have that passive be equally as good for every character. For example, Tracer, again, is by far the best DPS in the game. That passive benefits Tracer more than like any other DPS because now she doesn't have to kite to Mega. She can just hide, right? And it's noticeable. It's very, very noticeable. I think there is a very big reason as to why Tracer is again, the best DPS in the game. It's because of that passive, right? From a balance perspective, it's very hard to do. I think the game would be better without them for that reason. But again, it's a little bit of art and science, right? It's a little bit of art and science. And I am okay with them trying new big things. I'm still not a big fan of role passives in general, but that's just me.
Gonna have feeling, oh, it's gonna be the worst thing ever. Right. No, like it actually in the end, like I'd say was a net positive all around. Things feel pretty good. So I want to encourage you guys, keep swinging the bat, keep trying stuff, and you know, keep getting after it.
We're kind of like in that era of takes. You know, everyone's got to have a take on the thing before it comes out. And when we talk about things internally, it's so different where it's more like, that sounds like a good idea, but we just have to play it first. Like, just get it in and let us play it, and we'll actually see how it is. You know, so it's, like people can be reactionary to it, but I think they've come around.
Yeah, I agree.
At least you have.
Yeah, I come around to it. So actually another change that got made with this season was the rank system, which we touched on a little bit.
Rank system's great.
How do you feel about the new rank system? Is it accomplishing its goals that were set, or are there any issues that are still being dealt with?
Trying stuff like 66.
Yeah, so I think that we're like the TLDR is that we're happy, you know, with the rank system. We're happy with the launch that we just did, you know, and we think it accomplished a lot of our goals. And the biggest goal that we had for this update or this rework was just so that players could understand what was happening, you know, because we got a lot of feedback like that. And I think sometimes what happens when you don't really understand the system and you don't understand why you're either like climbing in rank or like losing rank is you start like you kind of start like extrapolating that on a lot of the rest of the game. You're not really able to tell yourself the real story of a match. And so sometimes it's not like, well, the reason I lost is because it's matchmaking's fault this time, just because like you just don't really know what's happening. So like we're hoping that people just have like a much better idea of what's happening behind the scenes right now. And we think that there's more that we can do with that too, you know. So I know like players they've asked us to bring back showing like individual rankings on the versus screen, you know. And we've actually talked about that a bit. In season 10, we're going to be removing the grouping restrictions. So in competitive, right? And it's a pretty big change to do that.
That's
but I think
really
we have a lot of
good.
safeguards in
I
place
love
to,
this.
to like keep match.
Again, they're unrestricted. Like I think the big mistake Overwatch 1 made in a lot of regards was they tightened down on restrictions over and over and over again. And there were some times where that was good, like open queue to roll queue, like. God, I'm scared about queue times, and I don't want to open that can of worms too much. But you know, all they did was tighten grouping restrictions, tighten everything. You can do less of more, right? You know, instead of more. And I think that we all focused in on that too much, and like that was a lot of people, including ourselves, at some points, who just sat there and like kind of viewed it in the wrong lens. And there's a lot to learn from that, right? And I think that it's nice to see this. This is why it's good that PvE got scrapped, right? Because now Aaron and his team can actually focus on like what's important in front of them. And I'll be honest, like I didn't have any faith in them after 4 years of continuous, like it just seemed like strikeouts, right? Like, aside from October 2020, which, you know, we won't dwell on that, it just seemed like it just was never going to happen, ever, right? But I think they've shown a good change in direct. Yeah, the quick play hack playlist is lame. The quick play hacks have not been good thus far. They've just not been good. But yeah, anyway, we're continuing.
Quality really high, and I think for the vast majority of people, like, match quality is actually going to go up because we're now going to have, like, 2 different, you know, like, pools of players, and one of them is going to be, like, the narrow group, you know, and the other one is kind of be like the wide group where people are getting into parties that have like pretty disparate skill differences. But for that narrow group, we're suddenly going to be able to like pretty quickly be able to put together like really close matches. And we think at least for that set of people, it's probably a lot safer for us to start showing individual rankings in there. We're a little worried about it for the wide ones, you know, just because of the focus it can put on certain players in a game. So like it's not quite everything that players want there. I know, like we still feel
that's
like
hard to do though,
to protect people sometimes, but to
try
to put as much information still in the game as we can. You know?
That's hard to do.
I would say from my perspective, and like I see a lot of community as well, just like there's certain things that they hurt, right? Like getting like the volatile, you know, you get the volatile and you lose like 40 points. It's like like you start losing your mind. I think like people like those types of ones, they hit so hard that like maybe some type of more information or like something that could kind of explain like, hey, you're getting hit with this because of this reason. You know, it's not just like you lost, you know, 2 or 3 games. It's like, well, I think it's now it's like you have the demotion protection, and then you lose the demotion protection. It counts that game as well. So like, you know, the volatile is like the demotion protection game plus the one you just lost, and that's why it hits so hard. Maybe something that kind of like, you know, show them that that's what it is.
Dude, hold on. That was like the most 2 polar opposite ads that you could have gotten in like a span, bro.
You know, just knowing like, you know, who was I playing against? Was I playing like against a group of 5 people? You know, like maybe that's why they were favored to win, because they were a group. You know what I mean? So, but I agree though. I think the rank system is much better than where it was, and I think it's given a lot of people competitive drive again. So overall, pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry. I'm taking some notes now too.
No, the competitive system is great. Like seriously, seriously, like the competitive system is the biggest upgrade that Overwatch 2 has had in its life. Like the new comp system is so much better. They need to add rank decay back, I think. But man, they should really like this is good. Like they should be really happy about that. Seriously, like I'm a huge fan of the rank system.
That's great. You kind of like saw through some of that demotion protection, you know. So yeah, we should probably talk about that.
Mindflex get afford a free ad.
I think you guys are always doing this kind of stuff though. Seriously, it means a lot. I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Cool.
Next one up. I gotta ask this one because this is just the bane of my existence at this point. But at the end of the dev video the other day, there was a small hint to like a streamer mode at the end. Is there anything you can share about that? Because I'm gonna be honest, personally, the current streamer mode doesn't. It just protects me from myself, and I don't need a protection from myself. You know.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Well, no.
Oh yeah, so we actually have a whole nother dev update that's going to be coming soon to talk about that more. But yeah, we are going to be adding to the streamer mode, and I think it's probably going to get to what most people want, which is like real server side anonymity. You know, to where like and I guess I was gonna say like I don't need to go into a lot of details of it here, but because I don't want to like take away too much from that next video. But yeah, something's coming. We'll go into a lot of detail with it, and I don't know exactly when that video is airing, in a few weeks or something like that. You know. And Gavin will kind of explain all of it there. All
right, good, because I was getting to the point where I was just going to try to start asking if I could get you to come play with me someday on stream during drops and just let the chaos happen. You're like, no, you're like, I will show them.
I had to make a separate Battle.net account for me to like ever play with people publicly, you know. So it's like, so I don't have to worry about it. So like it shows that we need the system to be better than what it is right now. Not everybody gets to like, you know, email Battle.net and get that extra account set up.
Yeah, true. No, yeah, you're not wrong. But I just want to say thank you for that, because I know there's a lot of other creators that have been talking about this for years now. So like, it means a lot. You guys are bringing this finally forward. It gives me a lot of hope. You know, it's like things that we need or been asking for are coming out, and appreciate that a ton. Next one. Is there any more details that can be shared about how past mythics can be earned? In the video on Tuesday, it mentioned that they would be available in the shop or able to earn, but there wasn't any specifics. Is it maybe how it was shown at BlizzCon, where you can like trade in the current season's mythic once you've earned it for an old one?
Not quite that. So the way it's going to work is you're going to like, as you like progress through the premium battle pass, you're going to earn like a new currency. It's called mythic prisms. And you're just going to be able to use those to unlock past mythic skins. And the cool thing is like over the course of that battle pass, you'll be able to earn enough of the mythic prisms to be able to buy and like fully upgrade at least one mythic skin in there. And what's cool about this is like the reason we're excited about this, and it's kind of what makes a lot of our job hard with Overwatch, is not everybody's excited about every hero. Not everybody's, and even if you are excited for a particular hero, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be excited about every skin we make for that hero, you know? So it's like the things that we try to put in front of players is like, hey, look at how amazing this is. Like, we believe it's amazing. I think a lot of people can probably look at it and be like, oh, that's really cool, but you know, like, I don't play Moira. I don't even play support, you know? And so like, why do I need that?
Based.
And so this is gonna like hopefully like open it up more to where people can look at some of the other awesome things we've made and go like, oh, I can finally get that thing that I've always wanted, you know?
That choice.
Yeah, it's that choice that's there. And then I think maybe like a few more details there is, so it's like you'll be able to get the base level of a mythic skin and then get some upgrades for it. And the nice thing is like there's some choice there also to where you don't have to fully upgrade a mythic skin if you don't want to. You know, like you can just get it to the point where you got what you wanted out of it, and then you can take some of your mythic prisms and spend them on either another skin or upgrades for another skin if you want to.
That's good. I don't know off the top of my head. Do some mythics have more options than others? So like would those ones be like harder to complete at that point? I'm not.
They're pretty similar.
Okay.
Hanzo had a few less than some of our other mythic skins, you know?
Hanzo always gets less in everything, whether it be his gameplay or his mythic skin. That's why I don't touch the hero anymore. Even though Hanzo's my original GOAT hero. The fall from grace has been on par for Shimada.
Yeah, so there's at least one that's a little bit easier. That would be a little bit easier to complete.
I'm actually going to jump ahead really, really quick because I think it's relevant to ask right now.
Ooh, okay.
Let me see. I just want to make sure I have this worded correctly.
Hey, by the way, I really like the light streaming in on you there.
Oh, thank you.
The lines. It's like a very artsy look.
Yeah, everyone's come in and go like, I like the new striped shirt. And I'm like, guys, like now the sun's kind of faded, so it doesn't make as much sense. But when I first started, it was just like my whole face. And it's just like, guys, I know we don't see the sun very often, but this is what sunlight looks like. Please.
Oh my God.
Okay, so I just want to jump ahead really, really quick because I think it's also relevant. Is there any plans or potential openness to giving mythic tier to other cosmetics other than skins, such as highlight intros, emotes, etc.?
I hope they do.
Ooh.
They should. They should.
What can I say about this? You know what? I guess I'm just not going to say no. How about that?
All right. I think that there's some serious potential there, and I just wanted to give it. I thought it was a great question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, shout out to chat for that one. All right, let's get a little bit in the nitty gritty. All right, I want to start off with this one. How do you feel about tanking in Overwatch 2 right now?
Oh.
Okay, so here we go. Right. Like generally, like what we want for a tank is for them to feel impactful, right, in a match. Like. So we are definitely keeping an eye on that because like as you raise the power level of different heroes, it's just gonna, or especially of different roles, like with DPS this season, it could feel like it takes away some of that. I think that we had an issue when we first launched that it felt like tanks were almost just too squishy. And there's like two parts of that. One, it's the DPS passive, and two, it's like the style of the game has changed a little bit. And so both of those on top of each other, kind of like players adapting and there being like a pretty impactful change is going to like hit a tank there. So like we're kind of like keeping an eye on this, and we think that there's a decent amount of it that has to do with that DPS passive, and we can talk about that if you want to, and we talk about like damage heroes and stuff. But like maybe there has to be we try to keep things simple, but maybe there has to be some sort of difference in that DPS passive for tanks and for other characters.
Yeah.
You know?
Support my guy Flats.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No. If you have one more thought, I was just gonna respond to that.
Okay, respond. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you. Okay. I think that the toning down from 20 to 15 probably made a big difference. Other than that Malgo week, which was very interesting. It's still early, and I want to emphasize that it really does feel like we're kind of playing Overwatch 3.0 at this point, right?
It is.
There need to be some major adjustments.
And
tank roll especially felt major adjustments.
It's better, for sure.
Me and Karki went on like the biggest losing streak of all time. Like he touched diamond, I got goddamn close. But then, you know, that same week climbed back up to like top 30, right? So like the swing was insanely large. But that being said, though, it feels like there's an immense amount of pressure on the role to perform, almost more so than the other two roles with DPS and support.
You can't make a mistake.
I watched Tens about like 2 weeks ago, got onto Overwatch and was like, oh, I heard there was a new update, you know. And I just happened to be still awake on Twitch. And I was hanging out with Karki and I was watching and I was like, damn, like, you know, yeah, his positioning and his game sense is kind of terrible, but his aim's insane. Like, you know, he just hits every head. It's crazy. Yeah. But it looks like he's just like, this is the most like relaxing experience I've ever witnessed. And Karki's like, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, this looks like an enjoyable, like easy, you know, he's just having a good time in like a high masters game. And Karki says to me, he goes, what do you mean? This is what my POV looks like. And I was like, mine doesn't look like that. Mine feel like I'm in the trenches, like, you know, fighting for my damn life. And if I make one small mistake, game's over. Right? Yeah. So like my big concerns are that where it feels like there's an insane amount of pressure to perform to have that impact, to the point where it's almost, what's the word I want to use here? I don't want to say like maybe irrational, but it's the amount of skill that is required and time that is required to put into it seems so much higher than the other roles, because it's not always mechanical. It's much more like game sense, engaging, stuff like that. But the other side of that I'm also concerned about is it seems with a lot of tank metas that we've been getting, other than the first half of the season, it just ends up being whatever is the hardest sustain character, and it ends up being mostly like Orisa, Sigma, Mauga, right? And most of the time you pick those characters because you stand there and try not to die and just exist as long as you can and get good value. My concern would be like, is it all like I don't really want always the number of characters to be the strongest, and obviously in the tank role you have to play what's meta. If you don't play what's the strongest, you're gonna get yelled at, you're gonna get screamed at, somebody's gonna be screaming tank diff in the middle of the game. You kind of
that meta now, and that counter swapping of ironically, instead of only being at high level, has now trickled down into the low levels because it's so much easier to counter a tank when there's only one of them, and each tank has gotten significantly more stats, right? Like their abilities are all stronger for themselves. So if you had a favorable matchup on a tank, that matchup will be even more favorable now than it was previously, and it happens in every rank, right? So it's I do feel for the devs here because it actually made balancing tanks really difficult. So yeah.
Right. I know that's a lot, and I know that there's not really probably a good answer to a lot of that. But I just wanted to at least.
I mean, there is an answer. There is an answer.
It's actually really good. And
there is an answer.
I think it accurately.
It's just nobody wants to say it
like
yet.
Some people feel about it, and I think there's probably more of this at higher ranks than there are at other ranks because there's a little bit more flexibility of picking off meta, heroes. But yeah, I think that's there, and it's like. I'm not saying this isn't a justification for it. It makes me think of that, the Spider-Man quote with great power comes great responsibility, where sometimes you feel that responsibility on your shoulders, as you're playing tank. And I play a decent amount of tank. I think I probably play more tank than other.
I've seen your Ryan. It's pretty good.
There you go. I'm not a great.
It was good. It was good. It was very good.
I great healers. That's what was good.
Oh, always passing off so humble, so humble.
But yeah, so I think that there's definitely something there, and it changes over time. Like the same way like support has definitely changed quite a bit, even just since Overwatch 2 has launched. But I think with there only being one tank out on the field, and with us trying to give that one player the ability to kind of like still like take and hold space, it has gotten pushed that way. It's tough too because like I don't want to go like too deep into some of this stuff. I think this is probably better to just go into it maybe like some other point. But like tank has been sort of like the biggest problem to solve in all of Overwatch's history.
Yeah,
it's not just now, and so the like I talked about the three times we made changes, to the way Overwatch was played. There was actually a fourth time before we launched Overwatch, and that's when we put in the hero limits. Because before that, you could have as many heroes as any type or as many of any one heroes you want. Like
6 divas.
Yeah, and I remember we had this
Anamura.
Yeah, so we had the internal tournament where we had like 5 Winstons and like a Zenyatta, and they won the whole thing. We called it the Quinston, and like we kind of always knew it was a problem, but that was like cemented it. Like that there's just an issue here with that.
That's awesome.
It was actually pretty great. That was like our original executive producer won that tournament too with the Quinston strategy.
Oh shit, that's fucking so cool.
So from there we put in hero limits, and then later on we ended up putting role queue in. And the reason we put role queue in, I don't know if you remember this, but it's like you get into a match and no one would play tank.
Yep.
And
that's how I became a tank player.
Right.
Unironically.
Yeah. And you might get one support in there. And so like it there was like
maybe in the metal ranks, bro, but oh my god, people were forcing goats so hard in GM. People were forcing goats so hard. Oh my god, dude. And now I will say, like, I don't really, I'm really curious. Right? I'm really curious with how, like, I'll be honest, I think the new tank design in the past 3 years has been exponentially better than the tank design in Overwatch 1. Every new tank in Overwatch 1 was just kind of fucking lame. I'll be honest. Like, Orisa, the bunker style was fun, but she's never been regarded to be like a fan favorite character. Ball is really niche, and Sigma is just broken. And now look at the Overwatch 2 tanks that they did, dude. Like, they did Junker Queen, which is really fun and awesome. Doomfist as a tank actually works well, and it has a dedicated player base to him, right? Mauga, people hate on Mauga's design. I think his design's fine. It's the gameplay loop, right? He's forced to be designed that way. And again, if it were 6v6, you could make Cardiac Overdrive only work on him have more specific things for himself that allow him to expand on his gameplay loop, right? And Ramatra's awesome. I think Ram's a really fun hero. So I've got to give them credit where it's due from the hero design side of things. Like, the hero design has been so much better for tank. So I would love to see how that works. I would love to explore it. And if they were to put 2 tanks back on the field, Aaron talked about talent trees and stuff and ways that would mix up different heroes' playstyles, right? By adding a second tank, 80% of the tank casts get a brand new style of play for the game. The way that you'd be able to play those heroes is completely new, fresh, and expands so much on what it means to play Overwatch. And I just hope they don't write it off in its entirety. I really don't. I really do hope they don't write that off.
All this social pressure on it to have somebody try to fulfill that role, because if you had some on the other team, they would crush a lot of the time.
I like playing Zarya.
And so like we introduced role queue and it was crazy.
People like Zarya.
Went way up. And the reason they went way up is because people weren't playing tank, you know? Now we actually have a pretty decent ratio of the people playing tank to the amount of tanks that are available like out on the battlefield. So it's like we've kind of like traded one problem for another is what it feels like, you know? And it's like the overall health, especially of like matchmaking and queue times, is so much better than it used to be. But yeah, there's more pressure on the tank players right now than there used to be.
Yeah.
A lot more steamrolls too. And this is where the debate should be. And I've got to give Aaron credit, right? Because that is where the debate should be. Most people on Twitter are sitting there arguing about like, oh, well, you like 6v6, so you don't actually want this. You don't actually do this, right? But to give Aaron credit, like he's sticking to objectivity rather than subjectivity, right? And that's important. Like it is a very serious point. Like what this ultimately comes down to is, you know, what I want to say is why weren't people tanking, right? Because I could queue Zarya all day long. Zarya translates well to DPS players, right? That's how they should design tanks. Tank Doomfist translates very well to DPS players, right? They all have insane mechanical expression. Ball doesn't have like very easy to understand mechanical expression. Orisa had 0 mechanical expression. Sigma had a little bit, but he was overkitted. Compare that to Queen, Ramatra, right? Even Mauga. Hit scan players will play Mauga all day, right? So I think they need to design tanks with skill expression that translates well from DPS that's actually fun and enjoyable. And see what happens. Because I think you'll have way more people queuing the role, especially with like less CC, more playmaking, right? So I think really the key is the tank. Like I think the reason for that was tank design was bad. You could say, sure, less people would queue tank in general. Absolutely. But I'd be willing to flex queue to tank a lot more if I could play tank Doom all day, right? If I could, like, I would love that. I would love that. I would love to play Queen. I'd love to learn these heroes and see how they work. And again, I just hope they try it, because I think the new tank design that they've been doing and those style of heroes, like if you look at the last 4 tank heroes compared to the first 3 tank heroes, it's night and day better. Night and day better. Night and day better.
I'm glad you guys are obviously super aware of all that stuff, but I remember back in Overwatch 1, there was like all the DPS players always wanted to duo with tank players because like we cut your queue times in half. It was a wild time.
You know, it was crazy too. There was like this place on the skill curve where like it was like this weird intersection, and like somewhere in like the upper the upper tiers of masters where like at like DPS, tank, and support were all queuing at the same rate. So if you were like there, you were like in like the promised land, you know.
High masters was
I told you.
Overwatch 1.
I told you. This is what I dude. Queues in October 2020, when the patch was God tier, in Masters and above, were great. It actually was great. I told you guys this. I'm so glad he said that. I claimed this reason. I said queue times were not bad. And they weren't. Because all 3 roles were rewarding and fun. And the heroes that were played were fun. And the experience was enjoyable. So people would just flex queue and it would be awesome. I'm so glad he said that. That's important.
We didn't even know it. That's awesome. Okay, I don't want to go too much.
Oh
more
my
on
God,
tank,
I'm bringing
I think
that
it's
up.
also affected by the other roles too, so we can jump into those and talk about it. But how does the team feel about DPS? And more particularly, what sparked the idea for the new passive, and is it working as intended?
Yes, we actually talked about that passive a lot. And like so like we're pretty happy with where DPS is and where it's moving. It does feel like they have more impact and
Mauga is a
especially
great
the type
copy,
of impact
yes.
they ought to have, which is like either securing or like really helping to secure kills on the battlefield, you know, and a lot of that has to do with the passive.
Yep.
Their old passive wasn't working. I think we all know that the like quicker reload on eliminations just wasn't really working, you know,
right.
Especially because a lot of times like once you got that elimination, you might not even need it anymore.
Yeah.
And for some of our heroes, like didn't even.
Oh, smells good in here. Can I have some?
Gronk, get Gronk off my screen,
Doing
bro.
well.
Hanzo.
Right. Yeah, poor Hanzo.
Fucking Gronk.
So yeah, we talked about a lot of different passives, and this is kind of like the one that we thought slotted into the game best, at least for now, especially because based off of where support was, you know, like support was having kind of like an outsized effect on a lot of the matches in Overwatch, and so this felt a bit like us being able to kill two birds with one stone with this particular passive, and so we like it. I think it's the thing where it's like, as it continues to play out, we'll talk about whether the numbers need to change, whether we do potentially need to have like a special exception for tanks with it, and we'll just
no.
I agree with all that. It was nice to let DPS be more impactful, and you know, you always saw the clips of the Dragon Blade not being able to cut through just regular healing. It was just like, oof, that's tough, buddy. You know, like Nano Blade too. Sometimes if it got real ridiculous.
I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah, so I like that. I agree. I think DPS having a more impactful role in the game is actually very healthy. When DPS is strong, yeah, it's just like, you know, some of those older tanks, and I'm gonna just say it, Ryan, at least in the higher level play, just feels not as good. Just because, like, you know, on Orisa, right? Like, you're talking like the characters that have like good sustain. You know, you can still shoot and fight back and have an impact while you're having your damage resist. But on Ryan, like, you just stand there with your shield and you can't do. It's like you're either doing damage or you're standing there, right? And it's especially when with the DPS passive, it's picked up the speed of the game quite significantly because like healing isn't as impactful. So it's more about getting out there and trying to go get those kills quickly. Especially when it was at 20%, when everyone's playing like the Junker Queen and trying to like run at them as fast as they can, which is, you know, honestly super exciting. But yeah, like on the tank side, you get poked out. Oh man, you just can't get back to full health.
I love that for the damage question. We're back to talking about Ryan here.
Yeah, I told you I was gonna find a way to bring them all back through it, and when we get to support, it's gonna be the same thing.
Okay, here we go.
So let's talk about support then. How does the team feel about support? You know, now, and is it better now than, let's say, what it was in pre-season 8? Where's that?
I think God, it probably depends on who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to a support player, they might not agree that it's better. You know, like they have been taken down.
Support feels way worse.
The thing is, like, if you look back at like over like the past year and a half, is when Overwatch 2 launched, supports were in a tough spot.
Yep.
Sometimes, like you had like tracers in the back line, you know, just kind of like annihilating them. Or like there was like that Sojourn moment, you know, where it's like you just like Sojourn just gotta like just could just take him out at will, it felt like. And so I think that there was a lot of community conversation about it then also, just about like the state of support and how it could just feel oppressive to play support, you know, which is interesting to think about, like all of the ways that like people that play a particular role can describe themselves and how it changes over time, which I think is healthy. It's probably not ever healthy to have people feel like playing their particular role is oppressive. But so we put a lot of work into like, okay, like how do we kind of like give them more survivability, you know, like and sometimes it's like, oh, maybe it's the two supports can actually like focus on each other and keep each other up, you know, or maybe we want them to be a little bit better at like 1v1 or duels or something like that, just so that
I don't mind the
like,
duels,
hey,
honestly.
when that like Tracer or Genji is back there, they really have to like execute well to be able to take that character out. And I think what happened is we just pushed it too far, you know, and so it's like we gave them like almost like
stats.
They were too good at being able to like keep themselves alive in some of those moments, or to where it's like, should it really be that like you have a 50-50 chance as like Genji or Tracer of taking out like one support when that's like what your job is to do, you know, even at the right moment, you like pick the right moment, you've played it right, and you still might go down for it. So like I think that wasn't really the right spot for it. We've tried to like shift it, and we're really hoping that this kind of is another.
God, why couldn't they have done this with double
passive.
shield?
We're hoping
Man.
it's doing that.
They did shift it well.
There's an adjustment for supports to go through.
They did.
Yeah, I think if you listen really, really carefully, you might hear some TikTok comment out there saying skill issue. You know, just someone out there is gonna, you know, you had the perfect blade, you know, you waited all their cooldowns out, but they hit, you know, 5 Curie food up papers, and you just got skill diff, dude. Unlucky. But you know, that's actually super interesting. The way you're saying is like basically like survivability versus 1v1 ability versus impact. Like, you know, support really is in a lot of ways like probably the most dynamic role in Overwatch, right? Like there's so many things that you have to do, and some of like the best players in Overwatch are support players. Like not like the base end of like everyone who plays like, you know, just stand there and shoot your tank. I'm talking like top end, like the best players. Like their skill ceiling significantly always seems like higher, and I think even the leaderboard sometimes reflects that. Where they're like right now, I think there's more champ support players than anything else, and you could argue that's their impact, you could argue it's whatever, but I think the best support players are good at surviving, they're good at 1v1ing, they're good at having their impact, they're good with their cooldowns.
Support, when it just can do the most in the game. That's why. If you are a good support player, the ceiling of support is higher than any other role, because a lot of these supports have dual potential. They have the strongest ults in the game, and they control, they're at a foundational level the most of the game, right? If you're a high-end DPS player, again, it's just like PEMDAS, right? PEMDAS and MAD, like the order of operations, right? Support comes first in that order of operations. So there's nothing before you that can fuck it up and take away your ability to carry the game. Like if you're a tank player, right, and your support's bad, you're just going to be bad no matter what you do, right? So yeah, it's not that support has the most skilled players. In fact, like DPS actually has the role with the highest ranked players across each role. It's just that support has the most impact on the game as a role.
And game sense, like the amount of game sense needed is so high.
Yeah, and the game sense is insane. Like, you know, I was talking about Tens earlier. You know, he's playing in high masters, playing Cassidy, he's literally standing on low ground on like Ilios Lighthouse, like not height, nothing. He's literally just standing like not next to in front of the tower in the middle. He's standing next to it in the open, just like click, 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 click. And it's like, okay, like I get it, you got that skill. I can't relate. But like, you know, it just feels so much different. And so I like having, you know, support shouldn't not be impactful. I might be regarded as a support hater, but I think a lot of people forgot that, you know, back in the beginning of Overwatch, I was super advocating of like, hey, they need something. Like, you shouldn't be playing Dead by Daylight on support, right? And running around in circles, but. You know, I think as you said, as the game's progressed, people learned how to play too in the 5v5 format with like, you know, you don't have that peeling tank all the time. You gotta learn how to fend for yourself. So I would agree. I think support's in a much better place. I think there's a couple characters that probably don't feel great. I think like Mercy's a good example where depending on who you're talking to, she's either broken or the worst character in the game. And that obviously isn't fun for them. So I feel for them on that. But I would agree with you. I think support's in a much, much better place. The only thing I would say, and I don't totally feel that way at the moment, but it can feel that way, is as a tank player, you sometimes feel like you're the puppet for your supports, and it depends on what they play or what they do, which is very different than traditional Overwatch for many years, where like your tank sets the tempo, your tank decides what the game is doing. Now it feels a little bit more like your supports decide the tempo of the game, where if they're dealing with a tracer in the back, if they're playing a different comp, like if they swap comp, you know, right as you walk out of spawn and you didn't notice, oh wow, I gotta play the game completely different now, you know. As Emon puts it, sometimes you gotta play prop hunt, where like you peek out, shoot somebody, then you run around the corner and don't move and hope they don't see you, you know, like yeah, because your supports are fighting somebody else.
That's amazing.
That definitely can hurt a little bit. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it seems like they're in a pretty good spot overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good to know. Okay. All right, this is another kind of a big one. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of leaning away from it, but like I'm mostly neutral on this. This is like a community question I think that's been brought up and talked about. Is the idea of hero bans?
Oh yeah. Okay.
So what are your thoughts on hero bans? Feel free to be as open-ended or not open-ended as you'd wish. There's no like just thoughts around it in general.
Okay. So when we talk about like different systems for Overwatch, a lot of times we'll start with like goals, you know, so like what are some of the goals we're trying to do and what are some systems that could like get at some of those goals. And right now, sometimes it feels like you can get these incredibly sort of like strong metas, you know, where like there is like the right set of heroes to pick from, you know, and like if everyone enjoys playing those heroes, it's okay, but it can stagnate, you know, when something like that happens, you know, and sometimes those heroes like last week with Mauga, it can feel really tough, the game. And so like, there's a version of hero bans that can address some of that, you know, to where it's like the community now is like able to shift what some of like the heroes that are going to be played in a match are. I think that there's like something else to talk about with a system like this too. And there's a goal of potentially putting like another strategic element into Overwatch. And it wouldn't be strategic over the course, like inside of a match and like the moment-to-moment gameplay. It's not the same as like swapping to another hero. But there's some strategy that you can use before a match. And I talked about it a little bit earlier that there's not we don't kind of have the same systems that some other games do. That does bring additional layers of strategy to Overwatch. And so like I think a hero ban system can provide both of those, you know, and it's not that. So we don't have plans right now to like make a hero ban system. It's something that we're just talking about internally, and when we talk about it, like we kind of frame it like that. And more than likely, if we were to introduce one, it'd probably be a fairly like we'd probably start in a safer place. It's interesting. I don't know if you saw Jake started a thread yesterday on Twitter talking about hero ban system. What?
I think I saw it. Yeah.
Okay, I only saw it to start because I'm actually not on the platform that often. I'm not like a huge social media.
Good idea.
And he kind of pitched one in there, and I'm like, oh, that's like pretty good. And I missed the notification later. I didn't read it, where he's like, oh, my whole system's like falling apart based off of what somebody said. So I'll have to go back in there and look at why he thought that. But I think it could provide some of that strategic element that Overwatch is missing right now. And I think it could help the community have a little bit more agency over what the meta is at any point.
Hot take, like I actually don't think hero bans are needed right now. I'll be honest, like I don't think adding hero bans will necessarily make more strategy from the gameplay loop side of things, because it won't actually change and expand on the gameplay loop. It just limits it more, right? So I actually don't know. I'm not pro or anti hero bans, but I think I'm in watch and wait. I'm kind of letting other people take that one because it's not really my wheelhouse, and I'd like to see what other people come up with. I'm more in the watch and learn phase, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's a lot to it.
Why are you not a fan of it?
I think there's a few things. One is hero bans are, I think, something that could be necessary if there was more characters in the cast. I don't think there's enough options. So, like, for example, if you queue in as a Pharah player, you're like a really good Pharah player, You're probably not able to ban a whole lot of the hit scans to like stop that, but you could ban D.Va, and D.Va's really good, like one of the best tanks, if not the best tank of dealing with good Pharah players in like ranked play, right? And if you take away that tool, what do you got next, right? Like you don't really have a whole lot of other things in your kit. Expanding on that, like things like without the
I don't like
streamer
it,
mode, which would cause actually probably in my opinion every player to use streamer mode, especially in high rank play. Most players know each other, and if you know that guy's a junk one trick or a mercy one trick, whatever, you're going to target that person and take away their best character and remove what would consider I guess be one tricking or at least what's close to it, right? Like and like let's say not even a one trick, let's say like if we're referring like old Overwatch.
Yeah, I want to play what I want.
Which was always like Orisa, Ryan, Winston, like that was their kit. If you play Numbani and you take away Winston, well, now they have to play D.Va, and they're not nearly as good on D.Va, right? So, like, that kind of stuff could really influence the way people are playing the game. And then on the lower end, like, your middle rank players, I think are just going to ban whatever they think is the most oppressive, which is going to be always, like, Junkrat or Reaper. It's always going to be, like, Orisa. It's always going to be Moira, right? And, yeah, it gives them more control over the game, it feels like. But at the same time, though, I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that, but I'm more, like, open to seeing kind of, like, what happens, you know?
Really good point about all the top-end players turning it on. It would kind of destroy that community, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay.
Yeah, you'd want it, like you'd be giving the other team a competitive. Like the only thing I can think of at that point is like you don't
doing
see
the pro
enemy
scene
team at all at the beginning of the match
it
while you're
be
going
on
through the
ladder,
ban phase, and then you could figure out like okay, you know what I mean, like who's on the other team? Oh, we already banned anyway, so it's whatever. But yeah. I think we don't have a whole ton of time, so I'm gonna start blasting through these.
Like,
I know I'm doing the same thing. I've been having a great time. I'm so sorry. I've probably been talking too much, and it's probably annoyed enough people because we're here to hear your thoughts, you know. Okay, I'm gonna jump to this one really quick. Any extra lore potential content, animated shorts like dragons or even bigger?
Oh wow. So we love lore and like the story
Dragons,
of
baby.
Overwatch, and we actually like I think that it's probably one of like the biggest like unique selling points of the game is just like this universe that we've created. You know, I don't think that there's a lot of other games out there that kind of have like an appeal on that same level. You know, so yeah, so I think that we would like to do more with it. You know, and like we're all kind of like always looking for ways to do it. Like I think like for instance, I guess I don't want to like give too many spoilers here, but for instance, I think we've got this like pretty like cute little unique piece that we're doing for Venture right now, and it's pretty different than things that we've done before. So like I think that we're starting to experiment with some stuff like that. We're continuing to make some of the other things, like we've got some like upcoming comics coming out, you know, and then beyond that, like on like the much bigger side, you know, like for like an animated short or something like that, I think it's a little too early to talk about like concrete details there, but we love making those. I
agree.
Just swore on stream. I'm glad I like pulled it back at the last second.
almost got him. You know, I know that it takes tons of resources. I know it's a ton, but genuinely, and I mean this, like the animated shorts are some of the best stuff in almost, I would say, all of gaming. Genuinely, nothing hits like it. And you know, listen, you were there, all right? I'm gonna kind of expose it. Hopefully, I'm either gonna get a Megan message soon and get in trouble, or what? But I don't know if you remember. Do you remember back 22? We went to the first ever summit, right? We all flew out.
Yes.
The first one. I don't know if you remember, but honestly, a lot of creators were pretty apprehensive in the beginning, myself included. You know, we had heard the rumors about heroes behind the battle pass and stuff like that, and we were like, oh no, like, are we screwed? Is this game like, are we in trouble? And you guys showed us the Kiriko short, and the entire atmosphere changed for the rest of the summit. It genuinely, it like brought people to tears. It was so fucking good, right?
I still cry every time I watch that.
It was so good.
Kiri one?
And I do genuinely think that kind of stuff is what gives Overwatch its like lifeblood beyond just being a competitive shooter. So I know there's a ton of work behind it. I'm not gonna pry anymore, but I just want to say I hope we see more of those genuinely of your best content that gets put out. And I hope to see
the Bastion one, bro.
Cool.
The Bastion one.
Okay, where do we jump to? Any heroes that are struggling that might need a rework of some kind?
Oh, okay. I think I mentioned Wrecking Ball in a director's take, so it's probably safe. You know that we're doing something with him right now. You know, so that would be the first one, and that would be the one that would come the soonest. And then we're looking at 2 DPS heroes right now. I don't want to give their names, you know, because it's not imminent when these changes would come. So it's I think like yeah, when they're ready, they'll come. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. And I think at least for one of them, he's pretty close.
Okay, I'm gonna throw my hand into the Rhine.
Oh yeah, what do you want?
The Rhine rework, please.
2 DPS heroes. One of them a guy hero. I doubt it's Hanzo. They've touched him already. Has to be Reaper. Has to be Reaper. 100% Reaper. Undoubtedly. Has to be Reaper. I'd be shocked. Reaper's definitely one of them. Maybe Cassidy. But I feel like that Reaper one I'm pretty confident on.
Listen, I love the character.
Yeah.
But it just feels like we've fallen behind on the times. And I don't know what would fix it. But
Earth Shatter going through barriers.
you know, I'm at the point where I'm not even sure if that would do it. That would just make Rhine versus Rhine worse. You know, like, you know what I mean? But I just want to throw it out there. No pressure.
Okay.
It's painful out here a little bit sometimes. I know it's so different too for like metal ranks versus the top level play. Metal ranks, Rhine's really strong, just rolls everybody. But once you get past that like Diamond Masters level, you just fall over.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up. Okay. Any chance on speeding up patch cycles from one beginning season, one mid-season to once every 2 weeks? I actually recently went back and watched Seagull's State of Overwatch video from 2020 to remind myself what was good from that time, and that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me. I don't know if you remember that video.
No,
it's a good one. It's on his channel. It's like 1.5 million views, something like that. Because he had stopped playing the game for multiple years, he came back and it was a pretty glowing review of like why the game feels very good. And one of the things that stood out to me was the speed of balance. And I agree with what you said earlier on how like balance isn't going to be the only content of this game. You need more than that. And I think you have the right vision with like, you know, maybe like some kind of semi-annual big update. But like more frequent patches helps both groups of like really hardcore players who play all the time, because like
Widow. The other one's Widow. The other one's Widow. Rework, Reaper, and Widow, and I'm fucking game. I'm so game for that.
Probably not. Do people do it? Yes. Those people are also probably your most committed and people that are like most invested in your game. And I don't think you should shy away from those people. But at the same time, on the opposite end, most metal rank players probably don't even read much of the patch notes. So like, as long as it's not so shifting where like their entire game is constantly shifting, I think it could be nice to look into. And at that point, I understand if the patches end up being smaller. But my big strife is, like, for example, with Malgo, which you guys did a great job, by the way, reverting. And I want to commend that because you guys have been doing it a lot. And I think a lot of people should give you credit for that. Walking back patches that maybe don't work out. The problem is, for most people, is they feel like, okay, let's say Orisa becomes meta. And then the next patch comes out and it's not quite enough, you know? And Orisa stays meta or stays played a ton. And it's like, well, I got to wait another month of this. I'm out. You know what I mean? So with it being faster, I think removes a lot of that potential anxiety of like having to deal with it for so long. But I at least wanted to just present that.
Okay, like we can talk about this for a little bit, and but I'll try to go fast because I guess we don't have that much time left. So, with that last comment, it was almost like, hey, we want them fast, but we also want them to be more impactful and like shift the meta more. Like that's what that Orisa comment felt like it was aimed at. But like, so right now, like we definitely plan on 2 like decent sized patches per season. So there's like the one right at the start, and then there's the mid season patch.
Right.
I think we have been talking about like what it would look like to speed that cadence up. And if you look at like the past few seasons, well, like season 9 is like a little bit crazy. Like we've done quite a few patches over season 9, and some of them are smaller. But like there are a lot of patches, a lot of seasons where 2 weeks in we'll do some sort of small tweaks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually what you're asking for, is like, hey, 2 big ones, 2 small ones. But that might be the way it would go. And we're looking at like a moment like towards the end of a season. Like, hey, is there a moment towards the end of the season where like with patches, we always want them to like try to make the game better, you know, or at least to address problems in the game or problem heroes. But like, if we did it close to the end of a season too, it's just like a nice moment where like you've kind of run your course. A lot of people are already through the battle pass and stuff like that. And it's just like, I think they're looking for something new. And so I think towards the end of the season, there's definitely an opportunity there for us to start doing more.
I actually really liked what you said about the 2 big ones, 2 small ones. I could get behind that, I think.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
We're getting like the stamp of approval.
Yeah, I could get behind that for sure. Because like you guys are trying. Like I'm always open if you guys want to try stuff. Like just try some shit and I'm in. You know, like if I don't like it, I'm like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But then you guys have been walking those back, which is like, what more can you ask for,
so important.
You know? I'm gonna keep blasting through really quick.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about using creator game modes like, for example, Cactus Puppy's Mystery Ults as an arcade game mode? Create daily/hourly rotations of community-made game modes similar in an arcade, similar to like how Apex has time modes.
A little bit. Like it's something we've talked about like ever since custom game and like the arcade was even introduced, is like whether we would have some sort of rotation there. This is even before the workshop. You know, it's like, hey, the like custom games that are popular, maybe we'll start putting them in there. It's never been like I don't think that we've ever placed it high enough on the priority side to where it goes above things like, hey, this is like the next big PvP or like competitive feature or something like that we want to put into the game. It's interesting though that you bring it up today, because it's like people are asking about it, you know, so maybe there's like more demand or more appeal there than we thought.
I think there's just untapped potential with your creators.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want to go totally down like, you know, like the Fortnite route where Fortnite has tons of people that make game modes. I'm not totally saying that kind of a route, but I think there's a lot of fun game modes that I've played that, you know, the creator, like what workshop creators have made, that I think, you know, gamers that just play Overwatch regularly would have a good time with, just to have something new. So just wanted to throw it out there.
That's cool.
Customizable lobby screen / music. Like you can choose which one you want to use.
God, we've talked about that a bit too. And like, there's an answer here that's probably too long to go into about like, as you play a game for a long period of time, for years, you kind of turn into a power user, you know? And it's almost like, you know, like you want like, hey, I want all the hotkeys and I want the ability to customize as much of it as I possibly can. And I feel like that's sort of where that goes into. And yeah, Overwatch is at a spot now where people have been playing it for like 8 years and they're looking for things like that. We don't really have a plan for that right now, but like it kind of goes into that category of like, what are some extra customization options we can add for players?
Cool. All right, I guess I gotta be really selective here. Can you give a hint of maybe what the next big thing you're working on is?
Oh man, we've kind of talked about it a bit, you know, which is like what could be another like mid-season beat for competitive and for the game. And so that's probably like, at least in like any sort of like short or medium term time frame, it's something like that. We do like I think there's an issue here though, which is like it's probably just dangerous for the Overwatch team to talk about really big things coming in a long time frame. You know? So it's like I'd rather just like keep things close until a little bit closer to releasing them.
Okay. Probably last 2 questions here. I just want to throw them a bone. Anything for console Zim issues?
Oh wow. Like this you can screenshot this is
so it's really hard for the games to detect this. This is something Microsoft has to do. So before console players freak out at Aaron, it's very hard for the game creators to do something about this. This is something Microsoft, from like an actual Windows software level approach, has to address.
Me like working through to like actually answer this question. The tough thing about this
it's
is
a hard
like,
answer.
We know there's an issue here. Okay, so there's an issue in the game, and we need to address that issue.
It's almost impossible for him to, though.
I think it might be frustrating for players to like see me dodge answering the question because they're being affected by it and they want to know that like what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
But if we talk about what we would or could potentially do or are doing or anything like that, it's just a way for like a potential people that are looking for exploits, whether it's them or anything else, to start doing something about it. It is a war.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a lot of people learned about that this week. Fog of War with the Apex stuff.
So it's a really difficult question to answer, but I guess what I'd want players to know is like, yeah, we agree, it's a problem.
Okay, I think that's good for them. I know a lot of people want to at least hear something, so I'm glad.
Microsoft
Last question before I let you go. I'd keep you here all day if I could.
That would be so fun.
You should have seen the original list of questions I was trying to narrow down. It was like 60. Like it was a lot. I was like, there's no way we could do 60 questions in 60 minutes. But last thing,
I could probably spend the whole 60 minutes on one of them.
Yeah, I think we both could. Really. Last question for you, and I'm going to combine them together so I get a 2-for-1 deal.
Yes.
Can we expect to see a roadmap for the year, or at least the next few months? Or I know you teased earlier with dev videos in the future. Is that potentially we should are we going to see more of you on camera again?
Ooh, so yeah, we'll be doing more dev update videos, and actually the next one, I'm not sure if I'm in the next one, but we've already got something filmed, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, talking about the streamer mode, and so yeah, we'll have something like that, and I think that this is something that we would like to do. It's hard to promise it. We've got like kind of like one more in the can, and we'll start going from there. But like I think each year we're getting a little bit better at getting in front of like our players and talking about what's coming and talking about the issues with the game, getting to hang with people like you, so. It's great.
I'm glad that I know that
it's nice having a dev team to root for.
I'm really glad it did. It's been
nice.
Super enjoyable talking to you. I can tell how passionate you are, and a lot of people sometimes don't get it. Like they will lump devs together as one thing. Be like, oh, they're not fixing Orisa. The devs don't care. Like, dude, you don't understand. Like, if we sat down in a room here and I was allowed to ask like as many questions as I want, we would be here the entire day. Like, we wouldn't leave. Like, we would just be here the entire day, and it would still keep going. Like, we would still find a way like the next day to pick it back up.
Wait, but you didn't even ask about maps at all.
Oh, you're right. I didn't ask about maps. Oh,
that was like my thing. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the maps really quick? I know they're gonna probably get mad at me, but like, you want to talk about?
I brought it up, so it's my fault.
You got it.
Yeah, like so I talked a bit about map reworks and the dev update, and it felt like there was a lot of excitement for it. Like,
yes.
like watching online, so like talking about like we're doing a Coliseum rework, and then I think that like people really responded when I listed out 4 maps that we're looking at right now. We're looking at New Bonnie, and actually with New Bonnie, I've had issues with New Bonnie for a long time. And one is like that the attacker's spawn room, it's further away from that first point than most maps are. So you're just at like this disadvantage, and even like having enough shots on goal, to just try to take that first point. But we're looking a lot at that one. We think the high ground there needs a lot of work. Hopefully we can kind of look at that spawn room right there. I think there's a lot of issues with New Bonnie and some of the other maps of just spawn rooms, right? Where it's just like coming out of that second attacker spawn room can just be brutal sometimes. It's like it is so tough. So I think we're looking at a lot of issues like that with that map and with other maps. I'd always had an issue with New Bonnie that it only has 2 defender spawn room, and most maps have 3. But King's Row only has 2 also, and so it's just like everybody likes King's Row, and I think that they actually kind of like that the payload moves pretty quickly through that second area, and one of the reasons is there's no spawn room there, so it's like I think we probably had a little bit of a misunderstanding on what the pacing of a match ought to be like. And King's Row and New Bonnie, even though there's a lot of issues with New Bonnie, they might have gotten it right in some respects, compared to some of our other maps. So let's say we've talked about, some of the others we talked about like Circuit Royale. Same thing, like coming out of that, even like the hardest part of the map shouldn't be coming out of your first spawn row.
True.
It's pretty brutal. Just coming out of that thing and getting around that first corner is way harder than it ought to be. We're looking at that. We're even we've made changes to that second attacker spawn room already, but then there's like that hill, like that hill is pretty brutal. And what's crazy about it too is as we've been looking at it, when you first start going up that hill, it's not even a 90-degree corner. You're taking more than a 90-degree left turn, and like you're just getting shot in the back.
Yeah, it's tough.
You're like trying to push that hill.
They got a good widow. It's over.
So hard. Yeah. So we're looking at that. We're looking at Havana too. Same thing with some of the Havana issues. That first attacker spawn room can be tough. the third one is just nuts
Yes.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh my
when you have
God,
and
yes.
then that widow perch at the
Yeah.
castle
Yep.
is so good. I don't think we'll get rid of that widow perch, but I think we'll probably nerf it. You know.
Yeah.
Looking at some of the sight lines, some of the routes in that first area also.
Mhm.
And what was the fourth one? Oh yeah, we mentioned Dorado.
Dorado.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a big Dorado hater, so love that.
You're the worst.
What?
I like Dorado.
No, it was my map. So like.
Wait, I thought. Wait, hang on. Do you mean Dorado and Kings Row?
Yeah, we only had 2
How,
levels.
what? Like, how does the duality of that work? That's like the best map and the worst map.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, dude.
You just didn't do that.
Dorado's a good map.
So I'm like, okay. And like I have like a 2.0 GPA at this point.
I think, is there another one in there? Maybe we can find a middle one.
I'm too scared to tell you right
What?
now. Like, to be honest.
Trust me,
Dorado
it only
hate
gets
needs
lower
to
than Dorado.
stop.
We can only go up from here.
Okay. Oasis.
Oh, Oasis is great. I like Oasis.
Okay, there we go.
Oh,
Actually,
that's a
we
great.
only did 2 of the points on Oasis. We had another level designer.
Oh.
Work on one of them. So then like Dorado, yeah, we're gonna look at a bunch on Dorado. Same thing. Like the initial spawn room can be tough. Like that area around the courthouse, I think everybody else calls it the church. You know, like it's a really tough spot in that map, and so we're kind of looking at. We've had some crazy ideas there that I don't think we're gonna keep like a jump pad in the middle of that space. You know, but we're looking at redoing a lot of that stuff too. And also like I think that sometimes our flanking routes get a little bit too long, so we're trying to figure out, especially on Dorado, just like how we can rein some of that stuff in to make it a little bit more useful.
Yeah, getting up to second on attack is real tough. But you know, maybe someday we can, you know, vote to ban or vote to pick maps. You know, yeah, maybe.
Oh, I love how you snuck another question in there with like a comment.
Why you calling me out, dude? Like if you just rolled with it, they wouldn't have noticed.
Nice try.
Now I got the flats and all caps from Megan. Now I'm in trouble. Nah, thanks, dude. We're 10 minutes over. Okay, I won't ask anymore. I won't ask no more. Okay, I promise.
Calling it.
I promise. Do we still get to answer that one question though? Or?
Actually on a schedule. I think I'll just talk about it. We like the way it would probably work is after you queue for a game, once it found a match, we'd probably bring up like vote on one of like these 3 or something like that. Perhaps, you know. And it's kind of great because like it does allow players to have a little bit more control over their experience. We are worried that if they try to vote a map out and it still gets selected and it's a map they hate, that might be that moment where they're just like out of here, you know, and they get
understandable.
It will give us a lot of data on our most popular and least popular maps, which for us would be really great to have. And I think if we were to do it, at least at the start, it would only be a quick play feature. There's like some worries about introducing it into comp. Some of the same worries as a hero ban system too. So it's like you just have to be a little bit careful with it.
Definitely quick play first. I think you don't have to be told that. You're smart. You know this stuff. You've been killing it this year.
They have been.
Yeah, I got you. All right, though. I'm gonna get in so much trouble. I gotta wrap this up. Aaron, thank you so much for doing this. Seriously, I appreciate it a ton. I hope chat and everyone else watching appreciates this as well.
So let me break some of this stuff down. A lot to be heard here. I love how Aaron's forward about problems. Like a lot of debate in the community, people beat around the bush, but it seems like, and again, this is why like I've never been anti-Aaron. I don't think any of the mess and mistakes that the Overwatch franchise had were his fault. Right? I think he was there. I don't think he's accountable for it. I don't think he's responsible for it. Like a lot of it was from upper end of Activision. Aside from the hero design, I think was really bad for years. I mean, honestly, like all good things here. I don't have a bad thing to say. It's really nice. Like the turnaround in a year from these guys is pretty incredible. It really is. And this is kind of like when I made my video really freaking pissed off about the PvE and a couple other behind the scene things that had happened with me and in the Overwatch scene in particular. There wasn't a whole lot of indication of things to root for the dev team, right? We had a worse rank system, a worse format. The PvE got canceled. The heroes were behind the battle pass still, right? It didn't really look like any of that was going anywhere, right? But now, behind Aaron, it really feels like Team 4 has rallied, and it feels like the community's rallying behind him. And it makes me really happy because it's actually nice. Like I had no faith, to be honest. I still am not sold, but I'm happier because like it just a lot of the fact that they're going back and reworking maps and they're showing a willingness to go back and polish past mistakes, right? That's a big deal, man. If the devs had done that years in advance, like a lot of this mess never would have happened, right? And so it shows they're learning. It shows they're on the ground. It shows they have their vision and they're not scared to do it despite what people think with the do or die of Season 9. And that's what you need to be a good development team in this era. And it's nice to see that. And it's really nice to have somebody to root for. So after seeing this, I think I'm going to have to make a State of Overwatch video. And this State of Overwatch video is probably going to be the first positive one since October of 2020. Because the reality is they're doing the right things. They are. And it's really smart. And it's really good to see. So, you know, I just want to give him props and give credit where it's due. You know, a lot of the hate watchers here, which there are a couple, right, are going to hate to hear that. But I pride myself on telling the truth. And I don't care who I piss off when I say it, because I want to say the truth and I want to be honest with you guys. This is good. And if you can't see why it's good, then you got to pay attention. Okay, then you got to do a better job of paying attention and being honest. So that was a more impressive interview than I anticipated. It's good to see their candidness, their forwardness, and their willingness to do a lot of this stuff. But you know, I think if you were an Aaron doubter, you shouldn't be anymore. I don't think that. I was never anti Aaron. I wasn't like pro Aaron either. I was kind of in wait and see mode on Aaron. For the Overwatch team to get out of the red tape little ping pong or not ping pong, I guess ping pong or a pinball of, you know, Blizzard and Activision and the back and forth with Microsoft coming in, and then all that got sorted and now they're this, and you know, it was a lot. It was the biggest acquisition in gaming history and there was a lot behind it. So, yeah, you know, this is the great reset. Overwatch has shed the baggage of the past and it's now forward looking completely with no ball and chain, especially with PvE being canceled. That was absolutely the right decision that they made. Completely the right decision, right? So they can focus on their niche and what they're good at. And it's good to see. So yeah, I mean, Flats did a great job hosting the interview. Aaron did a great job of questions. And, you know, I think I'm going to have to make a State of Overwatch video. And it will be nice to, in a year turnaround, sit down and be able to say good things and actually mean them. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. And a reminder, guys, go check out War Thunder again. Thank you for sponsoring today's video. Everything you need is down in the description, and have a good day. See you later. Take care. Peace.